Hello, product people. Welcome to the Product for Product podcast, hosted by Matt Green, data advocate and product manager, and Moshe Mikanovsky, product leader and author. Our goal is to serve the product community by helping you find products that can help make your work in product management easier. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Product for Product podcast.
Welcome back. On today's episode, Moshe and I'll be speaking with Justin Meets about the communication tool Microsoft Teams and how it helps product managers and can impact a company's culture. So let's hop in. Welcome to the show, Justin.
Hi, thank you for having me today.
It's a pleasure. Hello, Moshe.
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing good. Welcome to the show, Justin.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Well,
welcome
awesome.
to the show, Justin. Awesome to have you here. So before we start the episode, tell us a bit about yourself, who you are and where you're working and what do you do?
Yes, so I am Vice President of Product at RevLocal. RevLocal is a digital marketing agency that helps small businesses get found and chosen online. And I manage the product development team as well as the product designers.
Awesome. And how long have you been in product?
I have been in product, I would say most of my career. I started off as engineer, was doing a lot of product type things without even realizing it was product.
Yeah.
Formerly have been in product, started kind of as a co-founder and have been in product myself since 2013.
Nice. Always great to meet new product managers. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So today we are going to talk about MS Teams, and that might be, one of those discussions that people will be like, well, what's the deal with MS Teams and product managers, right? Like, why are we talking about this tool?
Yep.
But we're doing now this series for communication tools, and we feel that this is a very important series to do and talk about because a lot of what we do in product management is about communication.
Right.
So, and when we talk a bit about this before the show, you also shared, and you're passionate about, communication and product culture. So let's start with that.
Yes, culture is very, very important. I think, company culture and, based around the values, the behaviors of how you treat one another really goes a lot to the culture. And every company has its own culture and the way they communicate. And communication is very important for us to all be aligned, all be on the same, rowing in the same direction. That quote gets used a lot. I'm a huge fan of Patrick Lencioni and a lot of his organizational health. And most of his books are all fables with kind of like a story, but then, hey, how do you apply this? He's best known for the 5 dysfunctions of the team. And, the primary dysfunction is a lack of trust. That's the first thing. And I think communication really goes hard into that. And so that's really, really important so that you can have good trust, so that you can have good conflict. How often do we have different points of view coming in from multiple different sources as a product manager? And we have to have that good, healthy conflict, but we have to be able to trust the people we're working with, and communication is a big part of that.
Absolutely. And it's great that you're mentioning this book and this type of, discipline that we as product managers should look into, because it's not just about, what the product should do, what the problems to solve, how to build a product and stuff like that, but there is so much around it. And dealing with stakeholders, dealing with users, dealing with different type of personalities. And at the end of the day, we are building products for people, not just, I guess we love to do it also, but it's not just for that.
These communication tools are so important because, like you're saying, they really do bind all the stakeholders together, and it really allows the product manager to talk to various people within our organization, because that's so critical to our role. And to do it async and to be able to send stuff out, it really makes you be more thoughtful about how you're approaching people and how you're communicating information and the request for information. So like these kinds of tools like Teams, which I have a lot of experience with, really enable product managers to execute their jobs well.
Yeah, one of my favorite definitions of culture is how work gets done, and these tools help facilitate that. And you want to make sure you're always using the right tool for the right job. And I think that's one of the challenges as humans, as we communicate in different styles sometimes. I don't know if those of you familiar with like the DISC style, there's a different, kind of personality traits for everybody, and different people communicate in different ways, and try and watch for the ways, especially the people you're communicating to, try and kind of stretch to their level to try and communicate at the same level as they are at. It is really, really important, so that you're all kind of aligned and trying your best to understand each other.
That's even more important in the remote world we live in, because when you're not actually in a physical office with people, the ability to communicate through these kind of async communication tools and to be able to do it appropriately is critical these days.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive in a bit MS Teams, because MS Teams is used not just by product managers, it's used by many organizations for many different reasons. But we are here product for products, so we want to focus on that. Tell us a bit about how you use it in some of the product management processes that you have.
As I was thinking about that, I think MS Teams kind of ends up being the primary system that everything gets shared, not only from messages, often quick questions back and forth, but hey, check this out. Here's a PowerPoint presentation, or here's, some sort of some data in Excel. Check this specific thing out. I know a lot of time we will reference Jira tickets back and forth. Hey, take a look at this. So really, if you really think about it, it becomes that one kind of central system that everything kind of spins out of, and then is one really good place to go back and be able to find a history of those conversations and chats, especially as they're happening often asynchronously.
And do you see any difference between different type of people or different areas of the organization on how they utilize it?
Yes, I would say, everybody is a little bit different with that. But I think, what are those team cultures that kind of come together of when you use it, and what can be done offline, what is maybe best done as a quick video call, or maybe just a message, or maybe even a longer thing, an email. I really try, and as a product manager, I think also thinking of empathy, thinking of the other person, and am I going to be disrupting the other person? Are they heads down doing something? What is that, and what is the best way to communicate, and how urgent of a matter do I need to communicate in? And then also trying to think about time of day. Sometimes some of us might be wrapping up early morning, late, different times, and kind of be thinking about, hey, when is there an expectation? Hey, do they have to respond right away or not? And I think setting those kind of like team norms and those expectations of what is required, and making sure that it's healthy for everybody on the team and everybody's kind of playing by the same playbook is very important.
Right. It surprised me, working in my past few years, changing different employers. It surprised me sometimes to see how different people are with async communications. Some people are, I don't know if it is about, what they are used to and they learned before and they are keeping comfortable with that, or is it more about they don't want to share, or they want to share only in one certain way? Do you think that MS Teams makes it easier for people to use it, or there is some burden there for people that are just used to emails or just used to phone calls or stuff like that?
I think it depends on what we are used to and how we communicate. I think we do become habits of creatures. So I think we get those common easy things that we just kind of know how to do that sometimes hard to kind of break out of that mold. Previously, before this company, we were using Slack, very, very similar, but there's some little bit differences. At the end of the day, they accomplish pretty much the same task, but it is what is that kind of instant messaging that you have versus even email a little bit more longer. What are you attaching things? What are those things? And one of the things I really like about MS Teams is how it really ties in closely with Microsoft Office and your calendar as well. Most of our meetings are all done, video calls over Teams that integrates really nicely with the calendar. And then any sort of conversation, any side chats or any additional information, if we are sharing links out to Jira, links to different documents, that is all contained in that meeting itself, which I think is probably one of the things I kind of definitely like about Teams.
Yeah, I would agree with
Yeah,
that. That from my experience as well, that's, it sits so well within the Microsoft stack of tools. And so whether it's SharePoint, OneDrive, I mean, your ability to access all the stuff within the Microsoft ecosystem through Teams really enables everybody to be productive.
yeah. It's actually, you would be, it should be expected because this is a Microsoft product.
Mhm.
So it should be expected that everything is integrated very nicely. But I have I'm now actually don't use Microsoft Teams, and I'm using Google Suite. And in Google Suite with Google Meet, we and Google Chat, sorry, we share notes and whatever, and then we use Google Meet. And you would be surprised, but the integration there is not that perfect,
Mhm.
and there is missing features over there that I'm really surprised how Google didn't do it. So it's not obvious that if it's coming all from the same company, everything will be integrated properly.
Yeah, I've used Google as well, and I've experienced that same thing. I don't think Google places as much attention on the collaboration of all those different products as much as
Yeah.
Microsoft does.
And even with Slack,
Right.
I know they have, the newer video feature. They have the huddles. I've used those a couple times. I haven't liked them as much. Previously, when we use Slack, we use a combination of Slack and Zoom, which is nice. But if there's any sort of a chat that you do in Zoom, it gets lost with the conversation. Where the nice thing, if you want to go back to a conversation in Teams, you can find that exact topic right from your calendar. You knew right when that meeting happened. You can see that. One of the features that I try and use more and more with our teams are the notes feature. So, what are those key takeaways from the meeting? What decisions were made? What are follow-up actions people need to do? And putting that in the notes of the meeting in Teams, it's there safe for everybody to see. And it's very easy then to go back and reference.
I never used that. So that's, well, maybe next time that I'm on Teams, I will try it out. One thing I do miss from MS Teams is that when people join a meeting, the first person they joined it will notify me that the meeting started.
Mm-hmm.
Where with Google and other the Zoom or whatever, I never get such a reminder, and I only get a reminder, from my calendar, and sometimes I just ignore it, and then I'm like late to the meeting. So I thought that was a really nice way for Microsoft Teams to do that.
They do a really good job of that as well.
Yeah.
Even if you're in a meeting, if you're in another meeting and you want to bring someone in, they do a really good job of inviting people. I don't know how Slack and Google do that as much, but that was something that I've used where I've been in a conversation with someone and we begin to speak about a topic that involves someone else, and we go, hey, let's see if someone's available to come in, and we pull them into the conversation immediately. And that's really a smooth transition.
Yeah. The other nice thing around Teams is the ability to transfer between different devices. So, you might start in on your computer, but then have to transfer to your cell phone if you're going to be leaving and wrapping up and listen to the end of a meeting or something like that. It's a lot easier to basically either transfer between devices or have multiple devices in as one user instead of multiple things. So that's something that's very convenient as well.
Mm-hmm. But these are all these last few things we discussed are actually synced communication, because we're all on the same meeting or bring someone to the call. Or the async communication, I think that not enough people are talking about that. How important it is. People do it, but I don't think people put focus enough on it, because I see again and again that information is lost. And the reason information is lost is because it's in people's head. It's not either documented anywhere, or there is no way to find it easily, or stuff like that. Do you find that in Microsoft Teams, searching for, I think you mentioned that a bit, but I want to focus on that a bit more, that it's easier to find, past information or past chats, or pin different documents or stuff like that?
I find it pretty easy to be able to find those conversations, either whether it be Teams or Slack to go kind of back. I would say, Teams probably, I think because Teams is so integrated with the video and how we use it at our company is very much around those meetings. So I would say a lot of the times Teams does probably tend to be, in my experience here, a little bit more synchronous. There's definitely asynchronous communications going. We have some other specific channels, sometimes Teams channels, sometimes just kind of fun channels. There's a group of us that have a channel. There's several of us that have smokers, and we will kind of share recipes and share pictures of what we've smoked over the weekend. The brisket or the slab of ribs. So I think having some of those fun things as well to kind of bring the human component in as well. I think some of those channels, especially even over the weekend, get used more of, hey, this is what I'm doing. People kind of slowly over the weekend will respond, and those tend to be probably a lot more asynchronous, at least in my experience in my current company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I'm talking about asynchronous communication, I don't just refer to, I'm sending someone a message and I'm waiting for him to respond back, and later he'll respond back and all that stuff. But in general, everything that we communicate between all of us that is not done in the same room, right? Mm-hmm. So it could be by writing document, it could be by writing tickets and comments in Jira, it could be by sending videos to, record Loom videos to people and stuff like that. These are all, to me, is async communication. And like you said in the beginning, MS Teams, it could be the place where everything is kind of connecting to each other.
Yes.
What about, you mentioned channels a bit. I've seen different implementations of MS Teams where you have private channels and public channels. And what's your opinion about that? Transparency versus privacy and things like that?
I would say for me, for the most part, I think transparency is really good. I think that is one of the things that Slack maybe makes a little bit easier if you want specific topic chats. I think that's kind of where Slack is driven, where Teams often tends to be more around meeting chat. There is another tab in Teams for your team, so you can set up teams. Those don't seem to be read as much, or the chat is where I would say most of our communication happens. We also tried setting up some of the more fun channels in Yammer, which is also kind of an extension into Teams for some more of those specialized topics around even like Star Wars and fans and things like that. Those never quite took off. I think like we had hoped they would, where I know I've in Slack, I think some of those kind of topic-based things are a little bit easier. The ones that do seem to be they are kind of like more private, and it's just a group of people that we've like named, hey, this 10 people, and we've been inviting people. That has seemed to take off a little bit more than like an official channel on a particular topic.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I experienced that as well. Like that main channel doesn't get, like we'd have a product management main channel, and like we would try to post that async information, like, hey, I did a document, there's some information out here. But for whatever reason, we wouldn't be notified of it as frequently as the lower level chat stuff. And we would live in the chats, but these channels would not get as much traction. You would post stuff out there and nobody would look at it.
For our teams, I think one of the ways that we kind of solve that through the chats, some of those kind of like core meetings. So each one of our product teams will have a daily stand-up, with all their engineers and the product manager, the designer, and anybody else on that team. And often throughout the day, that is the chat that additional things get either asked or things posted or follow up from stand-up, an hour or two later, hey, you asked for this, here is this document, or here's an update here, or hey, can somebody quick pair with me on this thing, or hey, will you take a look at that? So often the teams end up using kind of like their main stand-up chat meeting for that type of specific communication with that particular team.
Yeah, these are interesting points, that it's almost like there is no one solution for it. It's not just all async or all synced. It's like a combination of both. And might have noticed it as well, but I think I noticed it also on Slack. So I didn't feel that it was very different. It was all about the team itself, whether the team was more chat oriented or topic oriented. And sometimes it was more about shifting it, forcefully to say, don't
Yeah.
do all these personal chats because no one else can see them. Let's do them in one place where everyone can see it. And I was able to do that with a previous team. It took a bit of time, for sure. It was a bit of discipline and telling people, oh, don't write this note over here, write it over there, because this is where people will actually see it. Right?
Yeah.
And I think you made a good point. Each team is a little bit different. And I think that goes to the kind of the subcultures of different teams. And, I think each team has kind of like their norms that they operate by. And, anytime somebody new comes in, how do you get them up to speed on those norms? How do we communicate as a group?
Right.
And you've got a little bit different feel for each team. And I don't know if you're familiar with that whole, like the forming, storming, norming, so that you can perform, and anytime somebody comes on or off the team, being really, really intentional about sharing, hey, what are our norms, reestablishing those norms, and talking about, hey, what are the expectations? If we get on, is video expected? How do we communicate? And talk through those things up front whenever somebody new comes on, just to help them get up to speed, to get to the point where you are norming so that then you as a team can perform.
Yeah. And if you don't, then a new person will always bring their own stuff and then will push people towards that. That's what will happen. It's almost like, waves if there is no norms exactly.
It's also an example of where cultures they change over time.
Absolutely.
And how can you iterate to always be thinking about, hey, what's the next step that we can do to improve things? And communication is one of those things that we probably don't communicate enough. So really trying to over communicate often isn't still even enough. They say, until you've heard something 7 times, do you really let it sink in? And, this is one of those tools of one of those ways to pass along the information. But the more different senses that you can touch, whether it's the visual or auditory and in different methods and by different people, it helps some of those things reinforce some of those aspects.
That's a very good point, because different people consume information and learn in different ways. And also they will consume it from different channels. So not everyone that you assume will consume it on MS Teams will actually do that. That's where it's hard to make those assumptions sometimes. Even though this is the selected method and this is a tool everyone uses, some people will still ignore it, and then they will say, oh, I was never told that this is happening, right? Mm-hmm. Or they don't like to read, they just like to see videos. Or they don't like to see videos, they just like to look at pictures. So there's always these different ways that we as product managers, because we have to share so much information with other people, we have to be really conscious about, how do people learn, and be empathetic to that, and provide them with that information.
Another piece of this I wanted to ask about was integrations. So when speaking about async information and learning and informing the team of what you're working on, I know I've used integrations quite a bit in Teams, whether that be a Power BI or whether that be Trello or whether Jira. From your experience, have you been using integrations with Teams as well?
Probably not as much as we had done before with Slack, with the company I was with, Slack. A lot of it is just kind of passing around those links. So definitely the internal integration with its own product suite is really, really nice, where you can just pull up a file, an Excel file right inside of Teams without sometimes even having to open up Excel. I would say that is probably the majority of the extent of embedded in using some of those integrations.
There is the integration between MS Teams and Azure DevOps is actually really convenient and nice. But funny enough, most people that are using these two products don't know it. So I've seen many people just copy and paste the URL of the Jira ticket, the Azure DevOps ticket, or the board, or they will just say, this is the ticket number. But this does not give you any information inside MS Teams about what are you talking about? What is that ticket? And then they go to the ticket maybe, and they copy and paste some of the story or the acceptance criteria. And I'm like, why are you doing this? All the information is already there. And there is actually a nice integration that you can add as a plugin or add-on, whatever they call it, So it will allow you to search inside MS Teams for the ticket number, and it will always show you the last ones you open in a ADO. So this will be even easier for you to find. Once you find it, it will create this nice card inside MS Teams, and you will have the information about the ticket. So you will actually can tell what is it all about, and then you can click on it and go to ADO if you need to. So I always found that integration very convenient. I don't know if you're using that or not. Are you using ADO or other systems?
I'm sorry, we're using Azure. As I'm sitting here thinking, there's probably looking through those integrations is probably just taking that extra time to look through and see what are those integrations of other software that we are working to really be intentional about that to help kind of improve that communication. So it's, one click away and more integrated. So you're not having to necessarily always click out to see that information.
Yeah. Every time that I had new developers coming into the team, they will always start sending me these this ticket number, and I'm like, no, go look at this video I made in Loom on how to integrate ADO with MS Teams and start using that.
Yep.
So awesome. So that was I might have even put that in MS Teams somewhere. I don't remember.
It even works with design tools and stuff. I mean, I used ADO with it, but like Miro as well. And so like design tools where you want to collaborate, so it ultimately it becomes a place where you can do so many different things with your team. So you could be on a call and work on a Miro board within Teams.
I've seen it before. I never done it, but yes, you're right. Now I've seen it. Mm-hmm.
So you never wind up leaving. That's how I kind of felt within Teams. Like you never had to leave the platform, and that was obviously their intention. So that was one of the cool things that I definitely liked about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, this was maybe a decision made before you joined your current company, but do you know why they chose MS Teams?
Because it was included with the Office suite. It's all integrated. We already had it, so that's what we're using. Yes.
And that's actually, I asked this question on purpose because I believe this is the number one reason why people are using MS Teams.
Yes.
and I believe this is why I was using MS Teams as well, because we were using Office suite. So why not? Right. Yep. But the question is that the right decision to make? The right reason to make that decision? Is this really the best tool for the teams to work on? What do you think?
I think it can go either way. I think there is something to be said about the platform play, and anytime you have a grouping of software, and I think you see more and more companies moving towards that. You see a lot of acquisitions around kind of telling that platform story. I think a lot of users, they don't want to go do something else or have to install something else or integrate something else. There's an ease of use of that. But when you have, one size fits all, there are some of those kind of unique specialty things that you sometimes lose out on because it does have to integrate in a certain way with other things. And so you don't always have the same functionality as you had with maybe those standalone tools that are solely focused and go, a mile deep in one special area instead of, hey, let's go a mile wide and only an inch deep.
Right. Yeah. And that was actually a theme throughout our entire podcast. Many episodes and series, we talked about that. Are we going wide with a lot of features? Or are we going deep with one feature doing very, very well or one functionality? So that's an interesting one. But I think that also, maybe I'm talking here from my experience only, so I don't know what others are thinking. But when I started using MS Teams, it was before COVID. And back then, I don't think MS Teams was really as good as it is today. And actually, the COVID pandemic made it a much better product. Because they saw what people really need. So a lot of features were added in the last, 2.5 years. Things like, a lot of the integrations, but things like the team, the breakout rooms, I believe.
Yeah.
That I don't think they had before.
Right.
They had one funny feature that they added, for the meetings where meet together or whatever they call it, that it looks like you're in a room in a study hall in a university or something like that. Have you ever tried that?
The together mode, yes.
The together mode. It's always funny to look at, but it's always very annoying to actually use. So I don't know why they even have it. but it just showed that they were playing with it, and be playful with the product could also get you to great places.
I think that's good. I think it was showing a way to kind of see multiple people's faces in a fun way. A lot of the time, I think it's out of beta now, but the large gallery view by default, it'll show like 9 videos, but you can go to the large video screen. In meetings, especially, I really like to watch for reactions of people and look at people's faces and are they engaged. There's a lot that those visuals cues can give you. So even before, when I was in Zoom, I would have the maximum number of videos showing. There's a setting in Zoom where you can go and add additional, to up that limit as long as your processor can handle it. And I always like that to kind of see, hey, what are the reactions? If I'm doing a presentation, I really like to be able to see the faces and see how are people engaging. Are they nodding? Are they glossing over? And I think that can help us as we are presenting, really thinking about, hey, what are those visual cues we're getting from our audience? And the more of the room per se you can see, the more you can kind of tweak your messaging based upon how the room is receiving your information.
Yeah. So a lot of that competition from Zoom during the pandemic created that need for them to really improve their platform, and I think they did a lot in that period of time, for sure. Cool. I don't know, usually Matt, you like to know about analytics and stuff. I don't know if there is any analytic related features on MS Teams. Are you guys aware of that?
Not that I can recall. I don't recall ever seeing any sort of analytics from any sort of experiences in there. It's a good question, though.
Don't they send emails sometimes with summaries? I remember seeing something like that in the past. I always ignore them because I never felt that I have any value in that. But
they have a summaries of the people that you communicate with the most, kind of across the Office suite. So there is that. The only other thing closest probably to analytics is, seeing who has read your message. So in the chat, you can click over and it will show you, if you're in a chat with 5 people, it'll show you maybe, 3 out of 5 read it, and you can see the people who have actually read the message and the people who have not seen it. So that is something that I will often pay attention to, of whether or not it was read and who read it. So do I need to reach out to somebody in a different way because they haven't seen the message yet? Especially if it's more of an urgent thing. So that's the first thing that came to mind for me.
Yeah, that's actually a good one, especially if we don't know if people have actually seen what we were intended for them to see.
Yeah, so that kind of plays into the async, right? I mean, it's like, well, you're kind of waiting for a response, but then like, oh, they haven't had a chance to see it yet. It's kind of like that text message thing where, oh, I know I texted them, and why haven't they responded yet? So,
absolutely,
so it's a good feature for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Is there any features that you think are missing there, like things you don't like about MS Teams?
I think it's, I don't know if they're missing, they're hard to find. I think our conversation that we had a little bit ago around, specific channels, some of those things are a little bit more difficult. One of the things it was kind of more of a fun feature of Slack. I love how in Slack you can do the custom emojis. I know, one of the teams we were using Slack and we had the little Mandalorian head for, this is the way. You can have a lot of fun with those, reactions to messages.
Yeah, Slack does seem more playful than Teams does. Now that I'm in Slack, it does have those all the different emojis that it comes with. So,
well, it started from a gaming company, so I guess that's why.
Yeah, maybe there's a bit of that in there still. I think in the ethos.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Anything else you would like to add on the Microsoft MS Teams?
I think, going back up a level, I think it just be intentional about your communication, and that, software can encourage collaboration, and that's what it's about. Start with the why, and why are you using a particular tool, and really be intentional about the way you use it. Establish those norms with the team of what the expectations are of how you're going to communicate, setting standards around, hey, when do we use video, and, how do we communicate? And I think for those more difficult conversations, especially, if they can't be done in person, doing it with video on, you get the read of the room a lot better. So I think just being intentional about those things to really create that human connection and not just hide behind the screen.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that message because that's really resonate and so important for product people.
Well, awesome. Well, I guess we'll wrap up on that note. Where can people reach you, Justin, if they want to learn more about Teams or about what the work you're doing?
Yes, probably LinkedIn. Justin Meets on LinkedIn. Occasionally post a few things on Twitter as well. But probably Twitter and LinkedIn are probably the two best places to get a hold of me. And always glad to communicate and talk product with other product managers.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Justin. This was great. And I think that in this series, we are going to hammer down about communication and culture. So this is such an important message for everyone.
Well, thank you, Justin. Thank you, Moshe. Thank you to all the listeners. And we'll talk to you later.
Thank you for having me.
For sure. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you to all the listeners. We really appreciate the feedback and support. Please leave us a review to help others find the show on Apple or Spotify or anywhere else you're listening to the show.